and welcome to this channel. Welcome to this video. I wanted today to do a little video about themes because, of course, the trend right now for a lot of people is to say, well, we have a page builder. New page builders now can create headers and footers and sometimes templates like search pages or 4 pages and so on. And you can do that with Elementor Pro, Oxygen, and others like Divi now can do that as well, and so on. So they're saying, well, you don't need a theme anymore because you can do all of that inside the builder. In my case, I'm going to show you Elementor Pro. That's true for some things, but not everything. There are some things sometimes that it's still better to do that with a theme. Yeah, that's it, a theme. Sorry, looking at something at the same time. So I'm going to show you a couple of examples on the website that I'm working on right now. Some things that can't be done with a page builder. Some others that probably can be done, but will be a lot harder. Sometimes to implement, sometimes simply not to implement. But for the end user, the client, if they want to do some modification, it could be harder to do than the way that I'm going to show it today. I personally use Astra Pro. I really like Astra, bought it last year, and I've used it since then. I've bought a couple of others at the same time, but since Astra is doing everything that I need, never really went with those. So, of course, if you have GeneratePress, Ocean WP, Page Builder Frameworks, and some others will have the same functionality as well. But I'm going to show it to you using Astra Pro. This is the website that I need to rebuild. So this is the old version, the current version, I should say, using a lot of ACF custom fields and custom bubbles like that and so on. So won't go through all of that because that's not the goal of this video. But I recreated all of that with Elementor instead. So let me show you one of the problems that I was facing with that website. I started, first of all, I created the header, the complete header, the menu here with the logo and search in Elementor Pro. I could have done that with Astra, but of course, sorry, it would have been a lot harder, a lot more complicated. We need to have a lot of CSS to change things. So this is one thing that I believe, not that I believe, but that I did with Elementor Pro because I believe that's a lot faster and easier to do. Same thing with the footer. Footer is not that hard, so I could have gone with Astra, but with the social icons here, then I found that a lot easier to go with Elementor Pro. That little scroll to top here comes from the theme itself, by the way. So as you can see, this page and the other page here, the home page, if I can show it to you like that, they take the full width, and that's the default settings from my Astra right now. But it was too big. Image here is strange a little bit, and so on. So I could come here and specify, for example, that my hero section here, instead of being full width, would be box. And as you can see, that works. It does put a limit to the content. Let me put that on the other one as well. It's going to be more obvious to see. So as you can see now, this doesn't take the full width anymore. But still, the background image and the background color takes the full width. And if that's what you want, then okay, that's probably what you want to use. But in my case, this is not what I want. This image is too big and this will still create a problem. So if I just switch that to be box, or even if I change the width, as you can see, doesn't change the background color or image. So doesn't give me what I want. So what I went is, if I go into the customizer, you will see that I have full width and full width stretch, which means it's going to take the entire width of the page for the, not the content itself, but at least the, well, the content as well, sorry, if I put it full width in Elementor as well. So I give the full control, in other words, to my page builder. Instead of doing that, I won't go with box or things like that, but I'm going to say full width and contain. So that way, I'm going to have kind of box layout like this one. So let me publish that. I've already set my maximum width, by the way. And as you can see, my header, by the way, and footer are still full width because I've set them like that in Elementor. Only takes care of the content here for the theme. So the inside content, this overrides the theme settings. So if I come here and refresh my page now, it's going to look a lot more like what I want. As you can see, way better. And of course, I had just 2 pages, 3 pages in my case, but if I had many pages, doing that in Elementor and going to all of the pages to shrink down my content would have been, of course, a lot longer. So that's one of the good use of the theme. Now, let's move on to the next part here. As you can see in my conference page, I have that title here, which is my page title and breadcrumbs. I could have probably done that with Elementor. Of course, not all the pages have it, so I would have to create a second one just for my own page, and if other pages don't have it as well. So instead of doing that the Elementor way, I decided to do that with my theme, because my theme, Astra Pro, offers to create custom page headers. So let me show you an appearance page headers. You have the possibility to create your own page headers. By the way, you will see here ASTC theme and some other places, ASTC Pro and things like that, ASTC sidebars. That's just because I've used the functionality of Astra Pro of customizing the white label, in other words, for my theme and plugins. So that's why you will see ASTC, but of course that's just Astra and Astra Pro. So page header. I decided simply to go and create 2. I could have created just one and specify in each page that I want to use a specific one. So for example, I could say no page at all, or something like that, and go on each page and specify if I want to have a specific page. Okay. In this particular one, since I want to have the flexibility of adding some page with page header, and again, I'm just talking about that red bar here at the top, the title bar, I should call it, probably. I decided one without it and one with it. Okay. Without it, it's simply really basic. I just specified no page header at all. So just take the content of the Elementor thing. Okay. And again, I could have said that by default it's like that, and I just had the page header to the ones that I want. But of course, since 99% of the website will use the page header, I prefer to go the opposite way. So this is the page header that I created. Sorry, this one. So I decided to go with 1 row, and I have used breadcrumbs as well. Of course, we can set the colors and so on, the spacing, and I've used a background color. Okay. Then in the display rule, I simply set it to be on the entire website, but I automatically remove some pages, like the front page, the home page if you prefer, search page, and 404 page. Of course, I could do that directly on those pages, but I don't want to necessarily the client to have to deal with that, so I already excluded them. So that means that if I go to a normal page, which by default has that red bar, because of course I've set it to every page, the entire website by default. But if I wanted to remove that bar just for that specific page, all I would need to do is go through the Asta theme settings, and I go in, of course, just because of the white label, it's the different name. And you have page header right there, and I can select without title and breadcrumbs. Of course, default header with breadcrumbs is the default one, so it's the same thing as select. But if I select that one instead and update, as you might guess, it will simply remove the red bar at the top here. So I can specify which page that I don't want it. Of course, like I said, if it's the opposite, you have 90% of your site that don't have that page header, you will do the opposite, of course. So just need to go back to the select, not necessarily specify page header, to go back to the default one. And that's one thing that would have been a lot harder probably to do with Elementor. I would have to create more than one and so on. Second thing that I wanted to show you, let me grab those here, sorry. Almost each section here at the top have a sidebar menu here, and it's going to be different for each of them. As you can see, this is my sidebar for the About section. I have the Membership section which has a different sidebar and so on. Now, I've done that, I guess, with Elementor Pro. Elementor Pro doesn't seem to have sidebars, but what we can do is simply create a regular template. So I set it as a section, because that's not an entire page, of course. So I created already an About sidebar that you can see here. Inside of it, I simply integrated the WordPress menu, not the Elementor menu. And the reason is simply that I want it to be like that. Okay, I wanted to use the default one with the hierarchy and so on. So I've put this menu inside of it. And of course, all I need to do now is on each and every page where I want to use that sidebar, I would have to create a layout like that. Let me just recreate it for you. So I need to create a 2-column layout. In the left column, I will have to use a template. Let me see. So drag and drop a template here. Select which one. So in my case, it will be the About sidebar template. And then on my right section, I'm going to simply put my content. So that would work, but I would need to do that on each and every page. Of course, it's not that big of a deal because since this is a template, if I need to make some modifications here, I just need to edit the template itself, and all the pages that uses it will still be would automatically be updated. But still, I need to do that in many pages, and I need to remember which template goes with each section for the About and Membership and so on. So from my point of view, it's harder to develop, but certainly harder for the developer, not the developer, but the client himself, if he or she wants to make changes later on. So what I did instead, as you know, of course, posts have categories, pages don't. So in order to make it easier to manipulate, because the goal here was for the end user to be able to change it really rapidly and easily, what I did, I created a page category. I'm using Toolset on that specific website. So with Toolset, we can create post types and we can create our custom taxonomies. So I simply created a taxonomy called page categories that I added to the page themselves. So that means that now I can have page categories just like we have for posts. And that way I could specify that all my pages in the About section, I have 58 right now, will have the About menu. And all the pages in the Membership, for example, will have the Membership menu and so on, or sidebar if you prefer. So any tool that allows you to create custom taxonomies like Metabox, ACF, pods, and so on, will allow you to do that. If you don't want to use one of those tools, there's also the Add Category to Pages that can do something similar to that. But since I already had Toolset installed, that's why I used that one. And you will see here why I used it. So in my customizer, first of all, I went to my sidebar and I enabled the left sidebar. Again, that's because, of course, most of my pages will have a sidebar. So if some pages, like my home page and my conference page, don't have a sidebar, I'll simply go into that page, and instead of the customizer setting, I'll simply set it to no sidebar. Okay? Just for the 2-3 pages that don't have it. But most of them do have it, so I'm putting a left sidebar. And of course, a left sidebar will simply mean that we have, by default, the main sidebar, we have the header, and we have many footer sidebars, depending on if you have activated the options or not in Astra. So you will have 2 or 6. Menu widget as well. So these are all the default sidebars. So the main one is the one, of course. All the others, as you can see, are in the header and footer. These are not what I want, of course. I want that to be on the sidebar itself. So what I did, I installed the Astra Sidebar plugin, which is free. So even if you have Astra free, you can still add that one if you wanted to. And then I simply created a new sidebar that I called Sidebar About. Inside of it, I specify which sidebar that I want to replace. Of course, nothing in the footer and so on. So I selected the main sidebar. Optional description. And then we specify where we want to use it. So let me do it for you. So I don't want to display that on a basic or all my pages. I just want the pages in a specific category. That's why I use the category instead of adding an option, a different option with toolset or something else. So it's not in a special page. It's not a post, of course. So if I go on, you will see here specific target. I can specify pages, posts, or taxonomies. Of course, without the category, the page categories that I created manually with toolset, I could still specify the pages, but I would need to specify each ID, and that would be a lot more complicated for the client to come here and change that. So that's why I use the page categories. So I can specify that here, but as you can see, I can specify a category. So I'm going to specify about. As you can see, it finds different things for Elementor, even posts or pages, the about pages. But what I want is just that here, page categories. So I have the page categories for the archive page, which has all the about pages inside of it that I will not use. But in my case, what I want is all the singular, in other words, all the pages, that is in the category about ASTC. So by doing that, all I need to do after that is simply to, well, first of all, to come to my widgets. Now that sidebar has been added. And in my case, since it's a navigation, I just need to drag and drop a navigation here and specify which sidebar that I want. So sidebar about in my case. If the end user needs to change something, it's easier to do it here than in Elementor, but most likely you will just have to choose between the different sidebar that we have here, not the content of them exactly. And then I just need to come in my page. Let's say, for example, if I go to all my pages and specify which sidebar that I want. And I won't specify directly a sidebar. Let's say if I go into my About page, just by specifying the category, in this particular case, the page category. So just by specifying that it's in the About ASTC category, it will automatically have that specific sidebar. So as you can see, this is the sidebar that I have. Just for testing, just for fun, let's change the category here to be, let's say, conference and update. And if I refresh, now my About page will have the membership conference sidebar. And that's easy as that. So cannot be that easy just by doing that in Elementor. Wouldn't allow me to have something that easy. Okay. So just an option to check. They're changing the category without even knowing what it will do. But when they create the page, you just need to specify the category and automatically it will have the right sidebar. All right, one last thing. Here, I needed to find a Science Center page where we have this content here, which is the text in the page itself. But then we have a form, which is really far from being done, by the way. It's just a prototype right now. But that form will allow us to do a search in the Science Center's members. Okay. And that was created using the custom templates. Okay, so if you don't know about those, usually you will create a child theme, by the way, and you will create custom templates for each of the things that you want. For example, here we have the template Science Center, which is the one that we need in this particular case. Okay, inside of that we have some PHP code. We have the taxonomy here, where we have the search entry, and we also have the results here. Of course, to make everything work, we also need the functions.php page that will, in our case, for example, the few sections at the bottom to be able to populate, in this case, for example, the theme states. And we also have the countries here that comes from a database. So all of that needs to be inside the functions, and the other one inside the template. So it's possible to do the same thing, of course, but again, I wanted to do that differently. One way of not having to create a child theme and create your own custom fields, custom pages and functions and so on, is to use a plugin called Code Snippet. And that's what I often do, to be honest. But in this particular case, there was a drawback with that. Code Snippet will allow you to specify whether you want to have the code on the front end, on the back end, or both, but not on specific pages. In my case, for now, only the File Assign Center page need to have it. Later on, there will be probably 1 or 2 or maybe 3 other pages out of maybe 60 or more pages. So I don't want to load that into every page for nothing. So that's why I came and I created custom layouts. So custom layouts, of course, the main goal of that is to be able to create elements like header and footers. A few months, let's say, or years ago, the Astra team also had the Astra hooks, which is a separate free plugin that you can still use, by the way, if you're only using Astra free version. But now it's the new way of using hooks is not with the hooks plugin. Of course, if you do have Astra Pro, but it's using the custom layouts. So custom layouts, like I said, can be used for headers and footers, but also for hooks. And that's what I did right here. So I created, in my case, 3 hooks. The reason that I did that is to have more flexibility. The first hook that I created, by the way, when you create a new one, a new custom layout, you will be presented with the default kind of a classic editor, okay, where you can enter just some content, but you just click on Enable Code Editor, and there you can put any code, PHP or JavaScript and so on. So that's what I did in my case. I enabled the code editor, and I've put my PHP code inside of it. So this is taken from that page here, where we create some variables at the top. Okay, well, just those sections here, instead of creating, again, a custom template. So put it there, and I load it with hooks. You see header, footer, 4 page, or hooks, and HTML before, so that means before the beginning of the page, before even the doc type and HTML declaration, it's going to load that. So in other words, just like it does here at the beginning, before any other content. Now, I've put a priority of 1, which is optional, and then I specify that I want to have that just on one page, which is Find Assign Center. Then I created a second one, which is the search form. And the reason I did that, because the search form are going to be used on more than one page later on, with not necessarily the same variables. If they are using the same variables, I'm probably going to put the 2 together into 1 instead of 2. But these are the functions that are coming from my functions PHP page at the bottom that I showed you earlier. Okay, so all my functions, my 2 functions that I need to populate the 2 fields are there. And again, HTML before, since it's PHP, and I use the priority of 2 to load it after the first one. These are functions that are loaded there, but are used somewhere else. And finally, in the page itself, if you remember, if I would edit that page, only those 3 lines here will be inside the page, and this is added after. So what I did is create a third custom layout. I've put the HTML with PHP that goes inside of it to create my search form and my result. And I enter that as a hook again After. So entry after means after the content. So Astra entry after, actions to add to your content or snippet after closing the article tag. So in other words, after the content itself. So this is an article and this comes after. You have a lot of other options after the content and so on at the top of the content. Many options for the content or even header, footer, and so on. So many options here with Astra Pro. And of course, again, I just display that in Find the Science Center. So that's why we have that form here. That's something I don't think that I would be able to do with Elementor because, of course, we cannot add any PHP code. The best that we can do is add some HTML code. I've tried to add some JavaScript and sometimes it creates little bugs. It works, but the display can be... I had problems with the JavaScript function that changed the dates for the copyright at the bottom. And each time that I go to edit that after that, I have bugs. I have just the date displayed or things like that. So it does work on the end, but it's a pain to edit if we ever need to later on. So that's a really good way of doing things with Astra custom layouts. So if you like that video, please put a little thumbs up at the bottom. And of course, click the little subscribe button to be subscribed to the channel and the little bell to be notified each time there's a new content added. And of course, always at the bottom, you're more than welcome to put your comments on the video. What's your experience with Page Builder versus themes and any other comment that can go with that. So thank you, have a good day and see you soon.